back in 2001, when we first began working with Gary Gygax, he pitched this wonderful series of books to us. He called them the Gygaxian Fantasy Worlds, and what he envisioned was this encyclopedic set of books for role players, writers, game designers, the whole lot of us, that we could use in making our games, creating our adventures,
Hey, Chris.
writing stuff for publishable content.
Sound check, sound check, sound check.
And there was really no end to what he envisioned this series to be. We eventually published The Canting Crew, The World Builder, Living Fantasy, 7 volumes in total. We had another 3 that were ready to go to print.
No guests on yet.
4 after that we were working on. So the series was really open-ended. We are bringing these back. That's what this Kickstarter is. We've got 7 books online ready to be printed. We've got another 3 right after that we want to get.
Session 0 was Monday.
As we were working on them at the time. Those will be definitely in PDF.
That was Monday night.
How well the Kickstarter does.
Doing a Session 0 with a new group.
Push beyond the necessary stretch goals and all that mess. But welcome to the
it was Session 0.
Gygax World Building
Hey,
Archives.
Wilson.
And please,
hey man, good to see you.
Give us your support. Share it around if you can. Pledge if you can. Whatever you need to do, whatever you can do for us and the members.
The Session 0 went very well, and it was on Monday. Oh, I never updated the email.
Join the fray.
Yeah, it did. I forgot.
Hi.
That's on me.
Gamescape 3D.
There's always something I forget to do.
Over our release of our gigantic cliffs. We have a lot to go
Hey,
over.
thanks.
So
Appreciate it.
let's get to it.
I said Anna and Les are not on yet, so I am.
This thing is standing up. Let's
I am solo right now.
Features.
Which is okay. Hey, Keith.
Get some of these figures out of the way. All right. You're going to have
But they're supposed to be
a folder in
both
there.
supposed to be on. So we talk about books and tomes tonight.
Magnet face cliffs.
Yeah, Session 0 went great.
Those refer
Got some
to
good
a few
ideas right off the
specialty
bat. All the
items
characters
that
are all
we
made
have
up
here.
already.
You can
Except
see
the
this
NPC.
tree
I'm going to have
right
one
here.
NPC in.
Actually just pops right off. And after you pop it off, you can go ahead. I have a door piece you can swap in there. I also just have a plain cliff face you can swap right. You can pop in there. Okay. So let's say you're on an adventure and someone says a magic word, maybe that makes a door appear in the side of a cliff for you to enter inside or whatever. So this one right next to it is another swap.
No, I'm not doing Gen Con. I don't think ever again.
Well.
It's just too big.
On the tabletop, as you can see.
Gary Con's my shtick.
So there we go.
I'm doing Paige though in the Philadelphia Gaming Expo and a VIP guest there in January.
Just that simple.
So I'm in there.
Okay.
We have our virtual crowd con in
our last
October.
one is down here.
So yeah, we got some stuff.
Shelves right here. This whole thing.
Gary Con already got my platinum badge in my room already, so I'm good to go for that.
Faces on the back. You're also going to have open locks everywhere. You have magnets. Most of the time, you're going to want to use magnets. We're using 3 by 8 millimeter magnets on this. I needed something with a little more punch than the 2 by 6s I usually use. So you can see the open locks being useful in some cases. Mostly I think you'll want to use them on side-to-side connections potentially because you will get into situations where the magnet polarity isn't set up correctly for what you want to do. And those open locks will override the magnets pushing away from each other. In terms of this base here, you can use any 1/4-inch material.
Yeah, man, I got it a few years back.
Here.
So
you could use 1/4-inch cardboard, 1/4-inch foam core, some kind of plastic, plexiglass, anything you got available. You could even use 1/8-inch material.
Main reason I have it is to guarantee I get a suite or a room, So hey, Anna.
So, sorry I'm late. I had to reboot things here.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
Les isn't
and
on
set right on top.
Oh, Les is coming. That's awesome.
Yep. Move these out of the way so you can sort of see the front mechanism.
I'm Orlando. What's going on?
Okay, so we got magnets all along here. And these are just the tops of the cliffs. Your board sets right in here, and you do not need to cut precisely. We got a lot of overlap coverage there. As you can see, in most cases, most spots, you're looking at up to an inch of coverage. So, if you're within
Best
half
day
an
of the
inch,
month.
it's going to
Mm-hmm.
take care of it. And then we have magnets, and these things just pop right in there and hold things into place.
Uh-oh, that doesn't sound good, Lando.
This one here is an earlier one. You can see I went a little deeper.
Oh
I
man,
decided
hate to hear
to
that.
change that
Yep.
for the one I'm releasing you.
Hope recovery's going
so
better
much
from now
3D
on.
print coverage going back. It
Hey,
doesn't
Mike.
really interfere if you're just doing a cliff face.
Let's see
But if
here.
you form these things into an entire butte, that extra rock really ended up taking up a lot of surface space. So I trimmed that back a little bit. So there you go. That's how those top plates hold into place. There are a few features that I'm not showing today that will be available in your kit. Each one of these cliffs will have a half version. So that's going to come out to about 135 millimeters.
No idea.
On this upper print part. So
That
you
I
can
do
print
not
these
know.
tops. I do not have that available for the swappable faces, but everything else does have that available. I also have 2 turnout corners instead of turning in, and I also have a 3-part
Here comes Les.
switchback.
That's always just good for
switchback
these. I bet he's
trail
got some
that
real
I
fun
will
ones he's
use as
made.
a painting demo about the middle of the month. So
For me, I
that's
mix
something
stuff up
you
and
got
then
to
like,
look forward
what's up, Michael?
to.
I never ever have saved like books and
Right.
tomes. Like
Let's
they're
flip this thing
strewn
around so we
throughout
can
like
get a
all my
quick
adventures.
look at
Like,
the
you
back
find
side of
this
it.
book and this
Guys.
tome, but it's hey Les.
Hello.
Okay,
But
here we
it's-
are
Jay,
on the back side.
digital records.
of
Digital
the,
records.
You can
It's
see
too
I'm
much.
telling you.
the cliffs themselves provide quite a bit
Yeah.
of support. So, if your platform's only going to be 7 or
But
8
they're
not, like,
inches,
campaign,
you probably
like,
don't need
altering,
any
you know what I
additional
mean?
support. The cliffs
There's a
will
difference
take
between,
care of supporting whatever
No,
platform
but they are
material you set
enhancing.
the
up
Tome
here.
of Infinite Planes
And they
or
are
whatever.
part of world
But if
building,
you
and
go
you need
Yeah,
to know which
maybe a foot,
NPC
14
wrote
inches,
what, and if
you
the
might want
characters
some
come
extra
into a
back
library,
supports
what
to
do
keep
they
this thing
find?
from tilting
Yeah.
over. As previously
You
mentioned,
can build
I have
whole
designed
campaigns
some
around
simple
literature and
mechanisms
stuff.
here
So
that you can pop together. They'll
Well, not
No,
only
it-
that,
the
but I'm going to
yeah.
give a
support
few
you
other examples of the way
on
that
the
I
back
use
end of
this
your
in mine.
platforms.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, cool.
hmm I have even a
The last feature I
mechanical
wanna go
thing in
over-
my in Hawk Tales that I'm going to tie into this.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
I said,
that will be a scoop today. I haven't told anybody yet.
mine's very. My books are very amorphous in my game because it's not the focal point, you know.
I've actually had as a hobby to collect all the books I've found in all the sources that are mentioned. And there's quite a bit of books. And Mike Bridges is one of the biggest contributors to this. He has a whole bunch of books he created. He had a whole page on his blog about books.
Oh wow,
back
great.
in the day. Yeah.
That's fantastic. How you doing, Les?
Yeah, I've been better, man. But
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
But I'm here now, so we'll deal
That's
with
good.
this instead.
Mhm.
How are you guys?
Oh, good. Yeah.
I've been just real life I've been really busy, so
Yeah.
that's why I got to get caught up with some things. But other than that, things
Yep.
are good. Things are good.
I posted 2 things on my blog today. So it's,
Oh, nice.
It's not that often I post twice in one day, but it happened that things were done. I was
That's great.
supposed to have made a 3rd post about what we're talking about today and scripts and stuff in Hawk Tales, but I didn't get to formulate it properly. So I'll talk about it here, post about it soon. Under sneak peeks. Yep.
Alrighty. A lot of people are at Gen Con, I guess, or on their way.
Oh yeah.
Not me. There are a lot of books. I mean, you know, that is, but that is you know, it's funny because that is actually a book that's in Greyhawk, but they name the third edition book that, even though, right? So it's in as its own publication, but it's actually a book in. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
Let's come live. Hey, long shot. All right. It's a Wednesday. Oh, let me fix the Zoom thing. No one was on with it when I started this. So how is everyone doing tonight? I got with me Anna Meyer and Leslie
Hello.
Reno, Oblivion Seeker, Invisible Conjurer, and a lot of other names to discuss a topic, books and tomes of Greyhawk. This ought to be interesting. So it'll be a very interesting discussion. So there's a lot of, we can go a lot of different directions with this. So let's figure out direction with thoughts on this. Les, what are your thoughts on a
Actually,
pretty cool topic?
this is the way I see this. A long while back, you did a thing about the libraries of Greyhawk.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And the cool thing about that is that it opens up an avenue for players to demonstrate skills that are not necessarily combat skills.
Oh, okay.
In other words, how do you finagle the librarian or the priest to give you access to the information that you need? How good is your character at researching that information? Does your character know the language that a book is written in?
That's a great point.
Which can be another problem.
Yeah.
And how in some cases you can also use books, and I'm not thinking necessarily of like the Book of Vile Darkness or any of the big ones, but you can use even minor books as MacGuffins, as kind of the thing that everybody is looking for, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to necessarily be. I'll give an example a little later, but there was an example of an item in my campaign where it wasn't that the book contained anything that was groundbreaking or devastating. It was that someone had compiled information, and that information, when used with pre-known magic, could amplify that magic or extend that magic in such a way that the magic would be more dangerous than normal.
Oh, okay.
And so everyone wanted this book for what it contained, if that makes sense, how it could be used to supplement or augment their own powers. And that became very bloody. You had the Scarlet Brotherhood, survivors of the Horn Society, a deranged warlord, and several cults all trying to hunt down this book. And the players, meanwhile, were like, "Oh crap! Well, we let that slip through our fingers. So I guess we better hunt it down now before it destroys the people we care about as well." And then, of course, you have the idea that you can use these books to communicate, even if it's just by a title or a subject. You can use that to communicate layers of history and backstory about your campaign world. If you could think about the Chronicles of Secret Times, the kind of scandalous history of the Sul Imperium that came up in Dave Cook's Vecna adventure, and then, of course, Gary Holian fleshed that out quite a bit when he was writing about the Silent Ones of Keoland. And you can think of what kind of scandalous information is contained in such a text, right? What kind of hints of nefarious goings-on and horrible doings.
That is true. Absolutely. There's a lot of things that I don't know if we expand it to scrolls, because scrolls aren't books and tomes. Well,
I would consider that basically when I'm saying books and tomes, I'm thinking just written knowledge.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the way you could use some of these ancient Egyptian scrolls where they had like various spells or guides for the afterlife or medicinal formulae, stuff like that. So yeah, you can include scrolls. Basically anything you'd find in a library.
Okay.
So.
That's cool. Thoughts, Anna?
A lot of them, and Lord Forth had one thing that I think is awesome. A book can contain someone's true name.
True names, yeah.
Yep. And another little flag about Hawktails will have rules for true names.
Oh wow.
and what to do with them, and how you can use them, and how to get them, and what they do. Yeah, they will be mechanically included in the rules. So yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, but this I think is a cool little topic that is underrated. I think it could be used a lot more, and it ties in things. Meaning we all have wizards, they have spell books and stuff, so we know there's a lot of power in them. And I think books as artifacts is very underrated. I think a lot of books, meaning we know that information is kind of dangerous and can be world altering, and also disinformation. It's an awesome way to introduce lies and disinformation and stuff in your campaign as well. So don't make sure that not everything in books, they can be someone's opinion, someone who wants you to believe something, or and so on. And so it's an awesome way to introduce rumors, speculations, falsehoods, and stuff like that as well, so to speak, and tie it in. A book can deliver spells, true names, a whole bunch of stuff that is tied in mechanically. And I will have a couple of more examples on how I deal with that in my campaign, mechanics wise, so to speak, that ties into literature, but we get to that later.
So for me, I was always disappointed about, like, and I'll show you what I mean.
Yeah.
And I guess this is a way to do it. Okay, did I not bring that one up? I thought I did.
I mean, you found a large library and none
well,
of the books were mentioned.
they're not. Yeah, but they're.
Yeah,
now I
that's
can't
always
find
the
one.
problem. That's always the problem I've had. That people go in the library and
Here
they
it
take
is.
a random book out of the shelf. What the heck? Which book is that? So,
Yeah. These two, I so wish that these two there was a Greyhawk equivalent of these two, which I just love and I use all the time, right? Oh, Jay, wrong button.
Okay.
Sorry,
Well,
sorry,
not
sorry,
the terrible
sorry.
one though.
Sorry, yeah, it was music. So like these books are great, right? The Pages from the Mages, which has all these little books in it, right? The table of contents, all these spell books are all these different, and they don't not necessarily are spell books. They're usually like thoughts, right? And they just happen to have spells in them. And then you have the second one is the Prayers from the Faithful book, and that gives you some really great ideas too. And you have all sorts of other, ones, D&D based for the most part, but it was just really fantastic stuff. And I always thought in Greyhawk we didn't have this. I guess this was Ed.
We have a fair bit of books. I managed to find 84 of them.
Right, but we have books. That are there's a paragraph on them. I'm just saying we don't have this.
But you normally don't need more than that. The rest you can, if you need them, you can add more to it. That's what I think. But what I need is a seed. I need a name, an author, and one sentence about the topic. Then if I want to introduce it in my campaign, I can riff off it, so to speak.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, but that's the kind of world building I love to do.
I know. Sometimes I want to have something there. Like if there was, I'll give you an example. Like, this is just an example. It's not on Roger. I would have loved for there to be a book of Tenser's thoughts or whatever in Return of the Eight when you go in Tenser's Towers with his spells in it.
Yeah.
Now that would have been cool, right? Something like that, or a book in that adventure in Jalarzi's Tower. A book. I know you can put them in.
Oh yeah, but the spells you have already. So all you need to do is but you have a lot of Tenser spells, and then you can kind of, the tricky bit was to figure out what was his opinions, or what would he write down in a book, so to speak, and do it. So that's the kind of tricky bit.
And I also think a couple of things on that thought. First, I'm always cautious with the big named NPCs, as I like to call them.
Right.
Who are other people's player characters. I'm always a bit skittish about attributing or ascribing points of view to them. Okay. Because again, it's like, here's how I tend to approach them. Okay. I mentioned before there was a kind of figure in esotericism called Dionysius, right? Not to be confused with Dionysus, but Dionysius.
Right.
He's kind of a hot topic at the moment. Yep.
And what happened was there was a discovered basically there was an author who published or who wrote a bunch of texts during the Alexandrian period who claimed to be Dionysius. Now, later scholars, when they dated the texts, realized these texts were written 200 years after Dionysius would have lived.
Oh, wow.
So this author then became known as the pseudo-Dionysius, right?
Okay.
The false Dionysius.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's the way that it exists in my campaign. There are things that are attributed to Mordenkainen and Tensor and all these great names, Bigby,
Mhm.
going all the way back to the great, the Mages of Power and stuff, where you have stuff that's attributed to named figures, but it might be, the attribution might be speculative or spurious, and it might just be a flat out forgery, right? A deliberate forgery.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of tension, if that makes sense, because then that forces the players into a position to try and ascertain the veracity, the truth of what they're
Mhm.
looking at.
Yeah.
And it
what
allows you to feed false information as well to the players.
Yeah, and one point that because like Greyhawk is like a medieval-esque technology world, so to speak. So that, or early Renaissance, that means that is kind of prior to printed books. That meant that books were copied; they weren't printed. So there might be multiple copies of a book, but it might only be one true book. If there's like a magic spell in it, that might be copies of it that has the thing in, but that might not be a scroll. You don't get the magical effect out of it, but you can read the text. So you can find a lot of these interesting books can have multiple copies. So each big library might be renowned because they have a copy of so and so. So a lot of these famous or infamous books, like in real world libraries in the Middle Ages, a lot of the time the scribes and the monks, what they did was copying books. That was part of their big job before the printing press. They copy, and that I can see in a fantasy world too. That you copy scrolls and even magical stuff. You can make copies of it. So there might be
The
more
item
than
that I
one
mentioned,
copy. Yeah.
the item that I mentioned for my campaign, there were 3 known existent copies: the
Yeah.
original and 2 copies that were made almost immediately after the original.
Mhm.
The original had several bits of marginalia and
Yep.
additional pages that
Mhm.
were not in the copies.
Yep.
And the copies were handwritten by a certain person's disciples and contained, by all accounts, some errors.
Yep.
So if you tried replicating the information as it was presented there, you ran the risk of screwing yourself over, basically.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, you also have to think, though, I mean, it kind of depends on how you want to approach the idea of printing and when it occurs and when it does. I mean, you can have woodblock printing. There are all kinds of varieties of typography
Huh.
that went through even during the Middle Ages.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I mean, you have stencils, you have all kinds of things that could be used. Movable type is just movable type is just a later example. Is just one example, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, but what you want to think of it definitely is the closeness of the text to an original, if there is an original, if there is an text, right? And then how the text, like maybe someone started a book, and then his apprentice carried on his work and added to it, and so on and so forth. And
Okay.
you wind up with a book that's actually been, it's attributed to one person, but it has something like 30 authors over the centuries. So
So
there you
yeah.
go.
Okay. So early on, in the very beginning, there are very few named books that I could find. Right, early on.
Mhm.
I mean, you have this in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Oh, watch. Let me make sure I don't hit a wrong button here. Right. The Codex of the Infinite Planes is in the original Dungeon Master's Guide. So, and it talks about, it says, in the distant past, the high wizard priest of the Isles of Woe, now sunken beneath the waters of near deep, discovered the work and used its arcane powers to dominate the neighboring states. So it does talk about it. And then the Archmage Zunk described it in the following: is Zunk a Kunz? That's Kunz, right? That's Kunz.
Yeah.
Yeah, backwards. Described the following fragment power to its strange disappearance. So there's this. Bigby's Crushing Hand was written by Bigby. The hand spells were written. Well, There you go. That makes total sense. So, and this is it. I mean, I couldn't find any other ones unless I'm mistaken. Now there are books in here that aren't named, which are cool, right? But they're not
Yeah.
named. Yeah.
Have you tried Dragon 82?
I have not tried it. Dragon 82.
Dragon 82 has Spells Between the Covers by Bruce Hurd, which actually
See if
gives
I
you
have
a
it.
list. Let's see. You have, for example, let me see, Extreme Powers of Observation by Qualish, and a list of the spells that are included in it.
Mm-hmm.
You have Kuroth, you have Bigby, you have Theory
1
of the
second.
Invisible Forces by Tensor.
Are you kidding me? I got 80, 81, 83, and 84, 85. No 82.
Zunk's Dissimulation and Obscuration.
I have
Um,
82 here somewhere.
Yeah, I can get it.
Darren's Components and Reactions of Phosphorus.
Hold on 1 second here.
Yeah.
A book attributed to Cass called
Mhm.
Legendary of Great Arms and Fabulous Heroes.
Yep.
Let's see,
Contains the following spells.
Yep.
Yeah, they're among my 86 that I found. It's a great
they're
list.
among mine as well. It's a great list.
Yep.
And also it has some great things about researching spells.
Mm-hmm.
A great overview of investment and
Yeah,
finding these books.
All right, so I'll have this as a reference if we go to some of these.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just
Like I love the Anna. There's that one table on there. I think it's on page 57. Excuse me. There's that table where it has purchasing books. When a magic user goes on a book buying spree, the following tables can be used to determine the number of books purchased, their prices, and their functions.
All right, well, that's good to know that this is a good article, and it's back in the old days too. What page was that?
It's in around 50 around. Let me see. It starts on page 50.
I'm right here.
I want to say
One of a kind. No, that's not it. Whoops.
55.
All right, I'm right here. There we go. Spells Between the Covers. All right, cool. Never read this. Guess I'm gonna have to. Hey, Clater. Very cool.
And one of the things that it raises, and I mentioned this when I proposed the subject, is that you'll notice that there's a list of spells, but these are books that sound almost like scientific treatises.
Right.
And one of the reasons for that is that if you go back and you look at some of the great spell books, so-called, from the Middle Ages, right, or alchemical manuals, some of them,
wow, there's a lot here.
They'll have titles quite similar to this, right?
Right.
Like Reflections upon the blah 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 blah, and what it is it'll have like a list of demons and their true names and so forth. Then it'll have rites for conjuring the demons. Then it'll have speculation, right, on like ether and on what lies between the heavenly bodies and the motion of the heavenly bodies and how that corresponds to the names that are given and certain rituals that have to be cast. So it's like basically you're getting it's a combination of theory craft, if you will, with things that are supposed to be practical or useful.
Okay.
And that's very much what these books are kind of sounding like.
Well, it's the same thing with. So actually, there was this article. I did not call me stupid. This is like the Pages from the Mages.
It mentions Pages from the Mages in there.
Yeah. So it is. It has. So how many of these named authors are made up? Some of these I've never seen before. Who's Alphon?
They are made up. They're
them?
just some of them are just made up, but they're cool because now
I think they are, or
now
they
you
might
have
have been
an
from
NPC.
somebody's campaign. They might have been from
Caterpillar.
Herd's campaign or something.
Okay.
Yeah. So now you have NPCs that you can but they are historic because most of these books are old, so they might not exist. But it's kind of cool because you get an NPC you can use.
Here, man, it's okay.
Or whose legacy you can use.
Yeah, it's cool. And there's also spells in it. You can always modify them too. All right, so this is a good Les. You're always the one that knows where to find these things, man. I mean, look, there's probably 80 here, 70 to 80 here. Yeah, because of some of them have multiple numbers to randomize. Present book's value, and wow, okay, some really neat stuff here. I'm just seeing how far it goes. Okay, it goes to this spells written in code. So it talks a lot. This is a great article. Oh, look at that. There's that charm that everyone wanted in the 80s. Oh, my God. I also noticed when I was scrolling, sorry for being transient here when I was scrolling, but I have to go back up here. Roger Moore wrote this article. Curing the Monty Hall malady. Oh, that's great. And isn't it a malady? Or is it's a curse? So, yep. Next time, watch this Steam.
And also, I was going to mention that if you go through the modules, since you were talking about AD&D,
Yep.
let me propose looking at Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh.
Yep.
Page 7, I think, has another book by Tensor.
You won.
Magical Properties of Gemstones by Tensor.
Mm-hmm.
See if I can bring that up.
And for what it's worth, in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, they've revised the title. I have both as variants.
What page was it, Les?
I believe it's page 7. It mentions magical properties of gemstones and magical properties of herbs and flowers.
In the study?
Yeah. Should be in the study.
I'm looking. Here it is. Library. No, it's in the library. There's more. Metaphysics and Mathematics by Neistel. And there's 2 by Tensor. All right, so I want to ask a question. How did you remember that they were here?
Because I have a long list of notes for books that I've included in
wow.
libraries. And
that is awesome.
Where did you find this?
This is in the original Saltmarsh.
Okay, original Saltmarsh.
Page 7 of you won. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's another in there. Maybe there's another in there, or maybe in you too. All right, Sam, that's cool. If you find it, let us know, man.
Yeah, I think it's the same. There are 2 that are in there that are in U2 as well.
Wow.
There's magical properties of herbs and flowers, and magical properties of gemstones, which is also known as occult properties of gemstones.
Yeah, there's 3. There's 3 in here in U1. Those 2 and Metaphysics and Mathematics by Neistel.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff like when you're younger, you go right over it. You know, I went right over that when I was 14, 15 years old.
Oh yeah, you skip it. Yeah.
Well, you read it. Like, that's cool, and then you sell it for 150 gold each, like it says, and that's it. You know, maybe that's my curse, is that I don't have a lot of tomes and I have a lot of magic items that are like campaign altering, campaign setting, but and when I get a book, for example, and just using this as an example, let me go. I think I saw it. Let me go here. So.
And by the way, I was going to mention too, if you just want to drop some lore on some players and give them some back history, let me recommend also Joao Severnane.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
In Vecna Lives. Do you know what book I'm talking about?
The Beasts one.
Beasts of Humanity.
Beasts of Humanity. Yep. So that one, actually, I'll be honest. I peeked in the wiki I don't ever use. So right here, and here it is, Beasts of Humanity. And it says, is a book housed in the Great Library of Greyhawk, requested by Joao Severnane, a member of the Circle of Eight. The tome details varieties of monsters, which runs human, touches on curses and familiar lines. Also, Hand and Eye Vecna are mentioned with a brief idea of their powers are discussed. So there you go. And that's from Vecna Lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, I include that. Obviously, you have any number of degenerate former humans and so forth throughout Greyhawk, and so it's useful. That's a useful way, if that makes sense. If the players have access to the Great Library or to a arcanist or scholar who has that book in their possession, they can learn a little bit about creatures that were once human but are no longer.
That's cool.
Such. And they can maybe get some clues. And not everything in that book, of course, has to be accurate, right?
No, of course. It doesn't have to be, a lot of it can be conjecture or someone exaggerating. Because it's their book and they can write in whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
So,
Same thing with geography. There's that the true relation of the near dive and land surrounding is in Vecna Lives as well. And I've had my players hunt down a copy of that before, even though I have that as a more common kind of book. It's just one that, when I say common, not everyone in the world of Greyhawk is literate, correct?
Right.
But I'm saying that you can find copies of this outside of out of the library. And that's a useful one because it gets into some of Vecna's history. It gets into the near dive. It gets into the Rift Canyon. He goes on. The author apparently goes on a number of digressions, and it's really a fun kind of thing, right? To have for your players, where you can drop it on them and have them. So how much time do you want to spend reading this book? Right.
Right.
How seriously, how much time are you spending reading it, and how closely are you reading it?
Right. True. So, for me, I'm Mr. Generic, right? So when I got back here and like manuals of quickness of action or manuals of stealthy pilfering or the tome of leadership and influence, like they would find like a tome of leadership and influence. After you read it and use it, and then it disappears. Your charisma.
Yeah,
goes
but
up
those
1
are
point.
just magical items. They don't convey any. They're not setting related. They don't have a story.
But I made
they don't have an author.
when they find them, I make them setting related.
Ah, there you
So,
go.
for example,
Mhm.
that's the way I've used books. So, for example, if you find a
Yeah.
tome of leadership influence, it may be the title may be Great Tyrants in Greyhawk's History, right? And that's what I do. That's how I and then they try to figure out what type of book it is. So that's kind of what my use. So those are like, and they disappear after they use them anyway. So it's just like, well, because it's a magic one, and that's kind of, yeah, cool. That's or one would be, I think one I said just recently was, noted deaths tightrope regarding tightrope walking.
Well,
So
yeah.
just because it's and throwing a little joke in there, and then those are my pickup books that I've written down. Now that's one for quickness of action or whatever. It's a dexterity book, and so. Patrick, thanks.
Well, there's actually.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that before we get into the ways that you can use books that are not necessarily magical, but you can use them in a way that has mechanical repercussions for your players. Because I do want to get into that, because there are some neat ideas about that circulate around, right? But in my campaign, for example, there is a history of the Flan that was written by a Sul historian who basically was with the Sul who came and after the cataclysms he comes over, and he winds up getting captured by a Flan tribe, and starts transcribing their stuff, and then of course offering commentary on their stuff. And the thing runs to, even though it contains very little actual useful information, once he was released, he kept researching more and more, and it winds up becoming this multi-volume work, right? And the joke in my campaign is that he's most famous, however, not for the work, but for the fact that he was assassinated, and that one critic one wag described that as the ultimate act of beneficial literary criticism. Was killing this guy before he could continue writing more and more.
That's funny.
So yeah, that's just a little thing there.
So do we want to go? I may skip because, like I said, I am not an expert by any means on tomes. Having them, I can just read them off a list, But like Anna, and unless you have some you wanted to specifically discuss, let's do that. Absolutely.
Well, both. I have a list of over 80, but and then it's also mechanically. There are so many cool ways you can use literature in your games if you just think about it, so to speak, and you have to house rule it. And so I built going to build it straight into my house rules, so to speak, for how to do it. So first of all, you might, in order to learn something, meaning to get it mechanically, meaning if you want to learn something that is like a skill of some arcana or something, you might need to go and find a book or learn a language or to learn to write a language. You need to find a lexicon or a translation book or a glossary or
A
something.
primer to the language or something like that.
And that will give you an advantage on the roll, or you read it through and spend a week reading it, and then your character knows that skill, so to speak. So you can actually use a library to get mechanical stuff in you get features, feats, or skills or stuff for your character. So that is built into the rule system.
And can I add too that what that comes in handy is when your players, one of the things I've noticed that my players have started paying attention to.
Yeah.
When the campaign first started, they really didn't give a crap about languages.
Mm-hmm.
As time has gone on and they've discovered that, hey, I wonder if that writing that we passed back there was supposed to be warning us about the trap up ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or,
Yep.
hey, I wonder if this book would contain something useful. They've started giving more thought to their characters' backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, are you a priest? Are you a priest of what god? What god? Where are you from as well? What languages are you likely to be versed in?
Yep.
What kind of traditions
Okay,
are
Rob.
you likely to be versed in? If you're an assassin or a rogue or whatnot, how high is your intelligence? How good are you at identifying and cracking codes?
Mm-hmm.
Because not all books, this has been discovered with a lot of these medieval texts that I've mentioned, where there's actually encrypted data within the text.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There are substitution codes, or you'd have to be familiar with a certain esoteric or iconographic tradition to pick up on what the imagery is symbolizing. Otherwise, it just looks like someone's deranged drug visions, or reads like someone's deranged drug visions, when in fact it's discussing chemical processes and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about with when I'm looking at that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you do that? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they've wound up sometimes it winds up being to their benefit. I think I mentioned the other day that one of my players came upon a book, right? I'll see if I can dig up the notes from the campaign on that. It was a book called Perturbations of the Ambient Void.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
It's 333 densely printed vellum pages bound in creamy brown leather with a sigil depicting a red eye with a spiral center on its cover. Gold lettering on the cover gives the title in common in Old Iridian. The text itself appears to be written in Old Iridian.
Mm-hmm.
The spine's lettering has faded, possibly from exposure to sunlight or regular fingering. And here's the thing: my players could not read it because none of them know Old Iridian.
Yep.
They took it. One of them took it and was trying to sell it to an NPC who is an absolute bastard, but he's a ruthless businessman, and he's also someone who, if the player figured, if I can get anything from someone, it'll be from him here.
Is he a Zilch's priest?
No. Although he has had dealings with Zilch's priest.
Okay.
He's a minor crime boss and information broker named Albie.
Okay.
And at any rate, they show him the book, and he opens it, and I had to make a saving throw for this NPC, who made the saving throw, but his eyes began twitching as he's reading. Blood begins pouring out like tears from his eyes. Blood pours down his nose and from his ears, and he kind of like flinches, manages to pull his eyes away from the book, slams it shut. And I describe how when it's being slammed shut, it's this reverberating echo, like a giant door being slammed in an infinite hallway with horrible and accurate acoustics. And so slam! He slams it shut on the table and says, well, you could have given me some idea of what it was, if only you'd known, right?
Right.
And he's like, you're fortunate I'm a patient man. Otherwise, I'd have to kill you for passing that book along to me. But yeah, basically what it is it is a description of the outer realms written by someone who experienced it and may have been completely insane. So yeah, that was one good example of a book that they were glad to be rid of. They didn't know exactly what was in it.
So they still
Still
don't
don't
know.
know. They still don't know, but they got rid of it.
Oh, that's
And
a
I don't
shame.
mind that
Okay, yeah.
because it's a really good kind of thing. And then another book that they discovered was a book I invented called Julius Dallin's Whispers from the Darkness Below, a thin volume apparently abridged from a much longer work purporting to describe locations and occupants of what its author interchangeably calls the Darklands, Night Below, and the Underoath. So
Cool.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
See, things are starting to come back to me now as we're just talking about this. I have a book that we'll get to, but it's coming back to me. It's one of the most classic things of all time that I did. I think Tim's talked about it, so they're starting to come back. Plus, I remembered one in an adventure that was very, very sought after and a classic adventure that was one of our favorites. So, so Anna, what would you like to discuss here?
Les, you mentioned that things can be encrypted and stuff, and
Yes.
so I created derived skills. Cryptography is one of them. So it's not something you
Nice.
have to learn. It's something you know if you know culture, deception, and investigation. If you're
Yeah.
proficient in those three, then you are skilled in cryptography. And I have a bunch of these. Derived tracking is one for it's a survival and nature. If you know those two, you can track. And it's such a speciality. So if you only have one of the, you have to have all three skills. Otherwise, you have disadvantage or multiple disadvantages if you don't in order to decrypt it. But you have all of these things, then you can have a reasonable chance of. Anyone can try, but it would be almost impossible if you don't have it. And so cryptography is a derived skill, meaning you get it for free if you have all the skills needed, so to speak. So if you have those three, culture, deception, investigation, you know cryptography simply because you know all the stuff going into it. And then I also have another thing that I think is cool, that wizards and spellcasters, especially arcane ones, but also the divine ones, they have a special, because they're writing scrolls, they read from prayer books and stuff. So I have magic fonts or magic scripts. You need to
Nice.
learn these in order, at least one script, in order to be able to make a spell book or make them. And if you find a scroll, you have to be able to read that script that is written in, or a
Yes.
spell book. And so I created a bunch of them, so to speak, or several of them. So one of them is like a standard Realmordian script. That's a standard, a lot of script. And then you have the older one, that's the Thaland script. That was the old script of the magic script of the Great Kingdom. And then the later one is the Realmordian script. And then you can have things like almond nuts, for instance. Then they tie little strings with nuts in them. That's a way to store spells. And if you don't know that, you might actually find a scroll that is actually a bunch of little strings that are nuts on them. That's a way of storing magic. And you can have two tattoos, for instance. It's like a skin that is tattooed in with stuff on it. You can have Vecnan skin graft is another one. And then you have flan carvings. They carved old druid spell and magic and stuff into wood, so to speak, so they can carve it into trees and stuff. So you can actually go out and find something in a tree. You can find a magic rune or something like that. And if you know that script, you can read it. And so there's a bunch of these that I found. And blood magic is another one. You can store your spells in blood, so to speak. That's another one. So there, and godly runes and stuff. I have a whole range of them. And that way you can tell that your spell book is in this language. And if you find one, you need to know that language. Otherwise you can't understand them. So as a wizard, to learn languages is good. And this is just the script. And you might have to know both a language and the script in order to be able to read and understand it. So if you find it in the spell book from Rel Astra, you probably need to know both Old Iridian, and you need to know the Thalan script in order to understand it.
Okay.
So
I was-
that's stuff I built into the rule system, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that, and I also like. I'm just going to throw this out there. When you're thinking about the individual book, right? Something that's worth, and it touches on what you were talking about with blood magic and everything.
Yeah.
What materials were used to make the book?
Yeah. Meaning the
In,
dwarven stone runes that they carved the runes on rocks and stuff. Or
yeah, or I was thinking also, that vellum, is it human in origin?
Mm-hmm.
Is this book bound in the flesh of 50 virgins who died trembling before an altar of diabolic worship?
Mm-hmm. You might have to have the script, both the ink and the material you're writing on need to be made in a certain way. Otherwise, you can't store magic of a certain type, or you get potency of the stories. So it becomes like a quest just to create a book or a scroll or something by itself, so to speak.
And within that, I would also argue mechanically, one of the things you can do then is if it's a particularly, shall we say, tainted work, whether that taint exists in the fabrication of the tome itself, or the material contained within it, or both. You can have where the characters need to make saving throws if they are making an effort to comprehend it. One of the without going into too many details, because some different players might come across this in the near future. There is a cursed text in my campaign. There are several, but this particular cursed text just appears to be a volume of really nasty erotic poetry, and it's clearly one of those things where someone has written, as you get throughout history, where the British would write something and say that it was a translation from the French or something. It's one of those dirty French books, right? Even though it's us English indulging our penchant for caning or whatever. So you have this kind of book that reads surface level like erotica, but what it is encrypted within it are the details of these various rituals for summoning demons, and for specifically for the purposes of mating with demons.
Yeah. You can imagine that there's scripts and stuff that are written that you can only read if you have certain senses, like dark vision, alignment sense, or something like that. Yeah.
In this case, what happens is, as you're reading it, if you start picking it up and realizing the code that's embedded within it, you become obsessed with figuring out the rest of the text, right? But as you progress, as your knowledge of what's hidden there becomes greater, the DC on the saving throw increases. In other words, the more you read it, the more likely you are to have your personality start being impinged upon by the book, where the book is going to want you to perform the rituals that are hidden within it. Now, of course, someone can read it and they can just be completely ignorant of that, and it's like, this is just a filthy book. And then that becomes even more amusing because you have someone who's obsessed over this filthy book, picking it apart. No, it's mine. Don't touch it. These are my notes to it. Leave them alone. And everyone's like, what the heck has happened? This guy's become obsessed with a work of pornography. No, they're obsessed with decoding the hidden magic that's there. And the magic itself is seeping into their personality and altering them, so that they will perform one of the rituals to summon one of these demons. It's almost like a trap, if that makes sense.
Well, they need to recruit somehow, and have an appetizing topic on their recruitment material might be good. So the flyers to recruit to the cults might have kind of cool repercussions, or it's an interesting fantasy take on messaging and propaganda, which I think is awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. That's one of the ideas that I was working in there, was the idea that it has that subtext.
I think it's really cool. Yep.
And also it has that cursed media kind of idea, right? That goes all the way back from cursed books to the Ringu films and everything else.
Yeah, but that also ties into a thing that you have to kind of wonder about in playstyle, meaning I don't like to take player agency is away. So I will try to lure the player to do it. I will not say that, oh, you failed your save, so now you're stuck, so to speak. I would try to lure the player in by giving them perks or it's so interesting.
That'll be the thing, is that they do get perks every time they fail there.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's a mixed
Exactly,
bag.
but you can handle that mechanically one or the other way. You can say it's a curse. Now your character missed the save. Now you're stuck, and your character can't.
Once you fail that third save, you're screwed basically.
Mm-hmm. Or you can handle it by simply offer so many cool stuff that the player, and then see if the player actually dig into the book and so on and role play it. So I prefer the enticement or perk method rather than have to say simply ruling that your character is now failed its save, so you're stuck
and it will depend on the player too.
Exactly. Some players might. Yeah, it depends on the campaign and the players you have, but you can. Yeah, you can handle both ways. It's possible. Yeah.
I'm fortunate that most of my players love playing their characters as their characters go crazy.
Okay, then it's good. Then go with the standard compulsion, so to speak.
Yeah. And then also along those lines, I was going to mention, Dragon Magazine 253 has another great example. This would be some of them I like more than others, but it's a really cool little article on
let me see.
By Scott Casper on a treasure trove of tomes, magical and mundane, from the Greyhawk setting.
I saw Dragon. I highly doubt I have that one at all.
It has the historical reign of Ulick, among other books, listed in here. And let's see.
No, I got a lot of 240s and 50s, but of course I don't have that one. 253, you said?
Yes.
All right, let me see if I can find that quickly. Yeah.
And it has some neat things about like how a bard can use the inspiration, can inspire troops from Ulick with a +3 bonus to morale instead of +2 if their inspiration draws from the Count Carter story.
Let me see if I can get that one, Dragon.
But one of my favorites, which has recently resurfaced in my campaign, which periodically does, would be the Dance of Knurl. Which, this is the description from that magazine. Anonymous author, circa 230 Common Year, copied by Anonymous, circa 450 Common Year. There's a 30 gold piece version and an 80 gold piece rare version. It's 6x8 with plain black leather covers and contains 43 8-line paper pages and 40 woodcut prints.
That's neat.
It's fairly common, and it's popular with commoners as it is hated by civic leaders. Consists 40 illustrations showing Knurl dragging away men and women of various lofty professions to their deaths. There is always some printed dialogue of the mortals complaining that their time has come too soon, with pithy responses from Knurl.
Yep.
That's funny.
And in terms of game mechanics, it mentions that the let's see, the game mechanics of the book are anyone with a religion proficiency, this is for 2nd edition, of course, who reads this book always recognizes the image of Knurl without making checks. Also, PCs who make a successful religious check at a -4 penalty know that worshippers of Knurl carry copies of the dance upside down to identify themselves to other worshippers. So in other words, people might read this book just because, it shows that the upper class, we're all dust in the wind, and screw the upper class or whatever. But the actual Knurl worshippers, the devotees of his cult, carry it around upside down to signal. And like it mentions, priests of good faith often try to ban this book, claiming that it encourages worships of an evil deity. Defenders of the book balk, arguing that it teaches an important lesson about mortality. So I love that kind of ambiguity, and I think that's a really great little
Scott
book.
Casper wrote that, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
There's also
never mentioned that ever.
There's also a book here which gives you a travel guide to the dry steppes, which in the form of a romance, like those medieval tales of. When I say romance, I don't mean kissy kissy. I mean romance in the medieval sense of the questing knights and epic adventures. Yep. And so there's a thing about that. There's also a book on herbal recipes. There's a book on the histories of the priests of St. Cuthbert. There's a book on learning ancient Sul.
Oh, nice.
And all these things have mechanical benefits, if that makes sense.
I've
Yep.
thrown Sewell, Flan, Backlunish books in. I have definitely done that on how
Yep.
to how
Mhm.
to learn books. I mean,
Yep.
it's like in old school, you started out. It said, well, additional languages for a certain intelligence for human 3. Well, how do you acquire them? You either have to go to a school, have to have someone train you, or you got to
Or
find.
you go out and interact with the world and
Yeah, you can, but
yeah.
where, like, if you're a bumpkin in the middle of frickin', if
Well,
you
a
live
lot
in
of places.
Divers, no one's going to be able to teach you, right? Because it's a
No, but a
shithole.
lot of language. No, but a lot of languages, meaning divers have probably both.
I was joking.
Yeah, common and there. I'm sure there's someone who speaks Old Oridian because it used to be kind of the extra capital of second capital of the Great Kingdom, and Elven is prevalent and stuff. So and some Flan too. So I mean, you can learn those languages in a
Right.
big city.
And you got to sit there for 9 months out of
And then it's a
gameplay.
shithole, so you can learn Orc and
That's it.
Goblin and stuff too. If you
But the thing is that you gotta have some kind of set for it. But with a
Yeah.
tome that you've located, I'm assuming that there's Sewell tomes all over the place. Well, not all over the place, but they exist. I mean, it's kind of, it makes
Yeah.
gives
Well,
you
you
another
can
option.
read it too, but then you need to
Uh-huh.
be literate. And if your character is not literate, you learn it the hard way. You go out and learn street slang, or you talk to people. Yeah.
If you're not literate in the game, it is a roadblock in most instances, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can see barbarians and lower class thieves
Well,
and all that.
a lot of people learn language the hard way, so to speak,
Yeah.
or that in some ways that's the easy way rather than the hard way by interacting with it.
Let me
Yeah.
see if
Well, also, I point out there's a distinction between written and spoken.
Exactly. That's the thing. You might know
Okay.
a language without be able to read it and write it. Yeah.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That is
That's
true.
normally not in D&D. In Hawktails, I have 4 levels of linguistic skills, so to speak, and so you can
See,
only the
generally
first one you learn. The rest you just get by upgrading your skill.
when my PCs, when my players are generating their characters, that's generally the question. I'm like, okay, do you know the runic version of this language? Do you know the whatever pictographic or written version, or do you just know spoken?
Yeah, and also, do you speak like a native? Do you speak like a tourist, or do you just understand the basics, so to speak?
Yeah, well, that I could give them maybe like, and that'd be the thing is I've actually had before characters recognize other characters' accents, right?
Oh, what cool is? Oh, that's the okay.
I got it. So
which where was this? I think
Dragon
I've seen
253.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, page 40. Good for Scott. I did not know he wrote this.
Yep, and it's got some really cool. If nothing else, I would recommend reading it and studying the form that he presents for the book, so that if you need a short version, like Anna was saying, just a prompt, just basically gives you when the book originated, who the author is or who it's attributed to, what it was made of, and what the contents look like, and then a brief history of it, and then the mechanical benefit.
This is cool.
Mechanical benefit or mechanical penalty for perusing it.
Fantastic. Intelligence, knowing, tomatoes, fruit, wisdom. That's funny. Yeah, true. So, well, that's and these I wouldn't say they're mundane, but they got some use to them each, which is
well, that's it.
They're not spell books.
They're not spell books. They're not magical books. But they can confer. For example, like that one about the dry steppes. If you read that romance, it gives the reader a fairly accurate depiction of a path, and so you're actually going to be, hey, there's that rock we need to go past on our way to this location. So you're actually going to wind up not getting, it'll assist you in not getting lost, for example.
Yes, Michael. So a week from Saturday, dude. That's the date, 9 a.m. Makeup game from Paige from last year, and we have Bill Master Crafter's son and my son joining us. So treasure trove of troves. Very great find, Les. I never knew about it either. So, excellent. So I'm going to go to I'm going to go. Let me flip this off here for a second here. Oh, cool, Rob. Very cool. So, one of my favorite adventures of all time is Shokanth, right?
Yeah.
So, I didn't know something about this, and I found this interesting. That now there's 3 artifacts in this adventure, right? There's Prison of Zagig, there's Dave's Wondrous Lanthorn, and the third is the Demonicon of Ingwolf, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I'm trying to think of myself, first off, why did Ingwolf write this? And then the number 2 question, and well, there's 3 questions that I'm talking about here. And number 2 is, why did she write it? That's one. 2 is, why, and I did not know this until there are 6 copies. It says right here,
Yep.
why did she make 5 other copies?
She might not need them done.
Yeah.
Other people have done them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're all,
Like you said,
but they have,
it's a powerful book. So a lot of people want to know, and it's always good if you
Yeah.
have a big library, you want a copy.
but those copies have all have guardians. Zygon,
Yep.
Zagi Guardians. So
Oh,
it
sure.
sounds like, I mean, no schmoes.
It's state secrets. It's kind of very important stuff. It's like you have the blueprint for nuclear weapons. You kind of you keep them under lock and wrap. A lot of countries have stuff like that hidden away. That other countries, meaning how do you make nukes or how do you make chemical
Right.
weapons and stuff? A lot of countries have that knowledge, but it's not common knowledge.
And it says that its brass-bound book contains a treatise of powerful evil creatures of lower planes.
Yeah.
And the DM may include descriptive material and personal names as appropriate. There you go. But lastly, there's a spell in here I don't know if I ever knew existed back then. Henley's Digit of Disruption. Now this is from Shokanth. This is early. I knew nothing. I mean, unless they renamed the spell in Unearthed Arcana when it came out. But here it is. This powerful spell is used against undead and negative material plane creatures. I wonder if it's banishment or something else. But this is... I have never seen it before.
There are a fair number of spells that Igwil seems to have
There
dabbled
are
in
actions there, yeah.
that are along those lines. Like this actually leads
It's clerical.
to another. Let me pull this up right quick and see if I've.
I'm dumbfounded.
There you go. Matter of fact, Dragon Magazine 225.
Oh, that should kill me with these high numbered ones, man. I don't know. Once again, I'm probably gonna have to search for it and find it. And Dragon 225. What are the odds I have that one on my machine? Probably 1 in 100.
One of the installments of Robert Mullen's Greyhawk Grimoires has Igwil's Nether Tome. Like many of the arcane texts attributed to Igwil,
I don't have it.
the Nether Tome's covers are made of ebony, as is the spine, over which is stretched a single piece of black Tanari hide. The hide is secured to the covers with brass corner pieces and edgings, and a brass clasp holds it shut when not in use, though it has no lock. The brasswork retains a continuous sheen, resisting corrosion, tarnish, and similar conditions. Obviously a magical embellishment. Unlike Igwil's other known works, the Nether Tome forms a complete and perfect square, each side measuring 20 inches, and its 2-inch thickness belies the vast amount of information it contains. The pages are composed of an uncharacteristically delicate, almost transparent parchment, and the lettering is small and somewhat cramped. And it goes into a little bit about the backstory here. And
I do have Dragon
basically,
225.
It's divided into several chapters. The chapters, and I'm going to come back to something that was stated at the beginning in a moment, but it deals with the lower planes. There's a handful of chapters describing the chaotic nature of the abyss and methods of
which issue was it?
Dragon 225.
225.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
And it's what's the article on this one?
Greyhawk Grimoires.
There it is. There it is. Robert Mullen, page 49.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love is it has methods of safe travel through the abyss. Cough, cough. Then there's several chapters describing the denizens of the abyss
Hey,
and their
Gary.
politics, psychology, and general behavior. And then it mentions this. This is a key. You remember at the beginning I said attributed to Igwilv. Here's the
Right.
next key sentence in this article. It mentions the chapters describe their politics, psychology, and general behavior with astounding clarity, almost as if it had actually been written by a Tanari. So you have the implication it's attributed to Igwilv, but this could be a book that was authored by a Tanari or demon with the intent of luring people into thinking, hey, if you followed my advice, you'll be safe traveling through the abyss. And here's an accurate depiction of the politics of the abyss. Trust all this information. Right?
Yeah.
And the last, there you go. The last chapter contains a modest and seemingly incomplete assortment of wizard spells, 2 of which are unique to the Nether Tome. Those include Igwil's Lightning Cage and Igwil's Timeless Sleep.
9th level. You know, you can cast. It's a 7th level version of Force Cage.
And then, of course, you have a Cerarax Librum is mentioned in here, and another book that's allegedly by Vecna. The key with these is to remember that some of these are attributed to these authors,
Right.
but may not be actually by them, as I mentioned before with false text. And particularly that one I love, because I love the idea that demons will realize that humans will want to follow in the footsteps of people who've dealt with demons before, right?
Right.
So why not plant a fake text, attribute it to Igwilv, and then basically, no, trust me, Igwilv says that this is how you can safely negotiate walking through these levels of the abyss.
Well, he doesn't live far from me, by the way. Robert Mullen is a furniture refinisher as of this, 20 years ago almost, who lives in Percy, Pennsylvania. That's not far. So, interesting. Unreliable narrators. Yep, Gary, that's correct.
Exactly.
Cool.
Or in this case, like an unreliable author. It's one of these things where, you know, that's the thing is, as DM, as narrating what the players are coming across, you're neutral. This is what it appears to be, right? And you want to use those kinds of phrases. It's kind of like you don't want to say to your players all the time, well, this appears to be ... unless you're kind of hinting that it might be something other, right?
Right.
With this, yeah, it's attributed to her. It's somewhat different in style from her other known works. And the style, the prose style is it seems really, really familiar with all of the intricacies of abyssal politics. Maybe too familiar, depending on how smart the PC is. So yeah, I mean, these are things that I think are worth playing around with too.
Excellent. I mean, Les, I'm so glad you're here, because a lot of these are not in my. They've never been in my wheelhouse. I never, I guess, went in depth far enough to find these, which is a shame on me. You know.
Well, no, this is what when I proposed the topic. That's the thing, is there are all these great books and books that may not be actually what they appear to be, and mundane books that you can actually incorporate into your campaign. If you see what I mean, yeah, there's a lot of way you can get a lot of mileage out of this, and you can just let players run crazy with it.
Yeah, Scott Casper's is more mundane than these. I mean, look at the spells in this book. Holy jeez.
Oh yeah, but these are artifacts.
Grimoires.
They're artifacts rather than books. That they should be treated as artifacts.
Yeah. And unlike the pages from the Mages and the Prayers from the Faithful, which are all taken out Dragon Magazine articles for the most part anyway. These were never taken out and placed in their own compilation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and that's the difference.
I think 220 isn't that late in the age of TSR, so they didn't have that much money and stuff. So, might be, yeah.
Well, you know.
Yeah, there were some years that didn't produce that much.
Well, you got to remember, these are all different authors too, and Ed did all the other, for the most part. Andy Collins and him, right, was a lot of it. So yeah. Wow, very cool.
And I've
So
got another few examples of things scattered around as we go on. So
okay. So Anna, what would you like to bring up next?
Let's see. We have list of books. We have Tasha did some she the lore of subtle communication. Speaking
yeah,
of things that might be titillating or stuff, so that might be. She wrote it according to my notes. She wrote it in 312 after she arrived in Greyhawk, and it includes the spells Ventriloquist, Message, Comprehend Languages, Legends, and Lore. Tasha's uncontrollable, hideous laughter, of course.
Right.
So there's a bunch of stuff like this. Vecna wrote Unordinary Necromancy. Kind of interesting one. Contains Animate Dead, Death Spell, Reincarnation, and Clone, among other things. Yeah.
Do we know where they're in or where they're from?
I just collected them. Some of them I've written the story, but if there's all the information there is, some of them are probably from Scott's article. Some of them are mentioned somewhere else. So yeah.
Okay.
I didn't always, if that was all the information was, I didn't care to. I wrote this down a long time ago, so I wasn't that keen on always telling the sources. If I got all the information, that was what I was looking for. And Leomund and Morton Kanan made a book of titled Architecture. They wrote it together apparently. That's also from one of these articles that contain a few spells in there. So yeah, there's
and
a
I was going
bunch
to
of
mention
them.
apropos of architecture,
Yeah.
Anna. That would be a neat way too for DMs if they're working with that idea of ley lines that were introduced. If
Yeah.
you're interested, if you want to do some cursory reading on sacred geometry and sacred architecture and ley lines, that would be an ideal way to
Or
feed the information to the players.
yeah, or if you want to make your own keep, how to make it magically secure,
Exactly.
or
Ideal
understand
locations.
defenses, or get an engineering skill proficiency, and
ideal
various stuff.
ideal locations of building them too, right?
Yeah.
If you're enchanting them.
Yep.
So things like that are kind of useful too, I think.
Mhm.
Because that'd be the thing is, I
Definitely.
love these little things. Like, think about the title. Always go for an evocative title too.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking of, like, for example, just to give off the top of my head here, you've of course in the Lovecraftian mythos, you have the Necronomicon, but then you have Robert Bloch created Cults to Ghouls, right? Cults of Ghouls, and Robert E. Howard created what was it? Basically nameless cults, Ursblock and Coulton. And then you have the Book of Eidolon from Clark Ashton Smith. All these things become, and the thing is that the names are just evocative, right? When you hear about a book called The Cult of Ghouls, you know you're in for a good time, right? This is a good party book.
Yeah.
And when you read about nameless cults, well, there's probably a reason that they're nameless, right? And it ain't just because they're forgotten. And so you get these kinds of evocative kind of titles.
Yep.
That you can really work them up. Like for example, in my campaign, there's a thing called the Book of Blood and Boundless Flame.
Okay.
And what it is during the Aerti conquests, there was a war mage who interrogated. Well, she wasn't a battle mage technically, but whenever they captured druids or necromancers or anything like that, she put herself in charge of the interrogating them, right? And she drew out secrets from them. Now, some of them obviously may have been things that were lies made under duress. Some of them may have been things where I hope you try this, you dirty blank. But she was gathering information on Flan's spellcasting. And the thing is that was taking a turn because she had her own aspirations. And eventually, when her aspirations were discovered, she and her students, well, she disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her teachings and everything associated with her was outlawed. Her name was stricken from various court records. It's only during the more recent turn of the kingdom towards demonology and stuff that she's actually been exonerated and is now considered a revered figure. But nonetheless, there are 3 copies of her compiled notes and her commentaries upon those notes. The Book of Blood and Boundless Flame, right?
Wow.
Book of Blade. Yeah, and the thing is that one of them, like as I mentioned, was a complete version. It had several pages missing from the copies that her students made, as well as a lot more of her marginal notes, her marginalia. The other copies, one of them recently turned up in Spine Castle, and was procured. Some players basically played the saps and wound up. It turned out that their patron was an Arcanoloth who was planning to strike a deal with the Fiend Sage.
What's an Arcanoloth, by the way? I forget. Is it demon? Or is that...
yeah, from Monster Manual 2. They traffic in information and knowledge.
Oh, so it's a DAEMON.
Yeah.
Okay. Daemon. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yep.
Very cool. So basically, the players wound up being skinned alive by cultists while the Arcanoloth walked off.
Does anyone survive in
yes.
In Spine Castle? Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow.
But they do it by how can I put it? They have chosen wisely. Is what I'll say.
That is great.
And in this case, they didn't realize that the person they were kind of trying to screw over was an Arcanoloth, who wouldn't have anything, wouldn't tolerate that, especially when there's a business deal he's got going with the Fiend Sage.
Lots of great things that are coming out here that you can all enjoy and think about utilizing in your campaign. So this one here, it must be been one of these that's gotten elaborated on, because I don't recall it being this much detail. So correct me if I'm wrong on this one. It's called The Chronicle of Secret Times.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that originated, I believe, in the Dave Cook Vecna.
Right.
And then Gary and several others elaborated upon it. I mentioned it in that article that I wrote for you, Jay, about the White Rose.
That's what I thought. That's where I thought I remembered this from. But it got elaborated on multiple times, and that's why Les, it came to me that you had this in that article, and then here's the background on it. So it started in Vecna Lives, but then because there's a lot of stuff on the silent ones here too, supposedly. So I'm assuming that Gary added all that in, or stated that he added it in. Correct?
Yeah. I mentioned that Gary and Dave Cook. I acknowledge them specifically in the article for their great contributions to that kind of thing.
Okay. So that's where you may take an idea on a tome that you like and expand on it. So yeah. All right. That's cool. And here, look, it says right in here, coming in the Hellion from the ancient Soul lands in their struggle against the previous Lord Vecna and his halfling lieutenant Kos. Says it right in here. No one heard me.
I heard you.
Oh, there you go. I just wanted to see if
I'm like,
Yeah, there you go. I'm joking. All right, so that's cool. So Les, I appreciate that, and that article, and we got a connection right here that starts in. That's what we're talking. Hey, Bones, that's what we're talking about, is taking something that started somewhere, and I guess we all do this with little blurbs. I do it all the time with stuff from the ashes, little stories, a legend, and all, and run with it. So here's another one. So that let's continue to run with it, connected to something in my campaign. So very cool. So, all right. I think Anna's up next. Is that right? I'm losing track here. Yeah, Anna, what do you got?
That's okay. Hang on a second. Let's go in. Well, let's see. We have. There was a couple of that one was one of the most classic ones that we need to mention, but let's go with we have, since Len was our friend of the show so much,
right.
Dear friend. So Leomund has actually 4 books to his name. One together with Mordenkainen and architecture, but he also has the thesis on dimensions and the planes, and the transcendental impenetrabilities. This is tricky to say. And the forgotten arts of oratory magnetism.
So
Nice.
are they all
Those-
in? Are they on the Earth Journal article?
They're probably from one of these articles that lists with all the spells,
Yeah,
because
I
they all
think that
come with
some
spells.
of them I
That
think are
the
from
one that
the
the
Bruce
article
Hurd.
that you mentioned earlier on there.
Bruce
I
Hurd.
think that yeah.
One
I
of them's
think
in
they're
Bruce
all from
Hurd's,
there.
but the others are maybe in Dragon's Foot because I know he did a lot of stuff there.
Okay, well, there might be.
That's my
I think
guess.
I think they're all from that same article, because
Oh, really?
they have the same. They have a bunch of spells, each of them. So yeah. So they made up for that one, but I think it's kind of cool too. So you can kind of put in different things there. So that's I love those titles, are so cool too. They're really And Qualish have a book, The Extreme Powers of Observation.
Qualish, yeah.
Yeah. And that's also a book that contains a bunch of spells. So yeah.
That is cool.
And we have Luke Wu wrote a couple of books, Tome of Studies of the Fourth Dimension and Science of Temporal Waves. Those sounds like if you want to learn or specialize in a school of
that
magic
one's
or something.
definitely in here. Yep.
Oh yeah, I think almost all of these come from a lot of them come from here. So yeah.
I honestly though, and I haven't seen any of the Lehman ones here, so I'm
Yeah.
curious where they are.
Yeah,
So
there's that might be taken from his adventures too.
Yeah,
might very well be.
Well, that's
Yep.
great because if it's in there,
Yep.
I'm thinking it could be an Earth Journal 1, right? That's the one
Yeah.
where the travels.
Yeah,
Earth Journal
every
1 or
time I
2?
see one, I just put it in
Yeah.
my notes here.
That's
And
excellent.
Melf, we have 2 books from Melf.
Yeah, there's one in here. I saw that.
Treatise of Universal Astronomy.
Yep, that's right here. And the
Yeah,
weapons
and
of ether.
the Weapons of Ether. Yeah.
Yeah, right. They're both right here. Number 98, number 99 on this list.
Yeah.
Too bad Luke doesn't know about them.
Exactly. Yep.
Anna?
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting there.
No, please.
Let's see. Architecture with Mordenkainen is spells between the covers. Let me go through here.
You mean the Lehman ones?
Yes.
Yeah, Lehman's
Spell between
Secure
the covers.
Shelter, Lehman's Tiny Hut, Force Cage, Mordenkainen's
That would be the
Magnificent Mansion.
the Bruce Hurd article.
It is
Yeah.
in here. Okay.
Likewise, Forgotten Arts of Oratory Magnetism.
They're
It's
not in
also those are both also in the Encyclopedia Magica.
Okay.
Okay. That's one we're missing on. Yep.
And a lot of these were reprinted in there, or
Right.
mentioned in there. It's another reason why that's a great
Here it is.
resource.
Architecture's right here. I found architecture.
Yep.
Wow. That's a lot.
And there's also, let's see, Transcendental Impenetrabilities is from Between the Covers, that same Bruce Hurd article, and so is Thesis on the Planes of Antimatter by Leomund.
So here's the thing. Here, I found that one too. All right. Too bad Les is gone. I bet you he would be pissed off at Bruce.
I'm not gone.
No, you know what I'm saying. That if he found out someone was
Len was gone.
Yeah, if he was attributing, someone else was attributing spells that he wrote, that Layman wrote, he would have gone berserk. You know, he would have. He's like, oh, you never wrote those. I just know Len.
But that's the thing. If you make something that becomes famous and other people use it, then it's out of your hands. It's
absolutely. But that's a great article. So, all right, let me tell my quick story here. So, I had a book that was just called The Retrieval. And this is from an adventure, and this was in the 90s, and this was the friends of, Marco, Anna. Friends of Marco, all those guys that don't play anymore. Which dragon is that one in? That one's in the 82, right? Dutch Dragon 82, that one.
Yeah.
So, the sage sends him on this adventure. And this is from my adventure. The name of the adventure, Les will love this, was There Are Many Unpleasant Ways to Die. That was the name of the adventure. And he said, this book needs to be found, first off. I know it's here. I know it's here. You may run across some legendary undead. Whatever you do not read this book under any circumstances. So they go and they find the book. There's a Demi-Lich. Back in the day, Monster Manual 2 had just come out a couple years earlier. Demi-Lich, all sorts of stuff. One of them sets a trap off that imprisons one of the characters. An imprisonment spell. And they're like, well, this is a book of retrieval. So
But that's why you should see warning things tags as a seal of approval.
They were
So you should
right.
should
Right.
not complain that when someone tells that things you shouldn't read
Right.
your stuff. That's
So
it might be a good thing. Yeah.
ask Tim this story next time you talk to him, Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Tim's
Okay.
character, Skeeve, imprisons the antithesis of the campaign Macarash at that point within his prison as well. He's that high level. It's Monty Hall days. Puts him in there. Needless to say, this is not a book of retrieval. It's a book of mass retrieval. So they go and because they want their guy back, and the guy is like, "Oh, you got to recover me, got to recover me." So they read it, and poof, all this stuff starts popping out all over the place. Their guy comes back, but they've released 6 or 7 major and other arch nemesis that have been in prison, and him gets released after Tim spent years trying to get this guy, and Tim went nuts, and that was So it was a trap. Right,
That's
and they
awesome.
fell right into
Yeah.
it. So that's the one I was saying when I remembered things that had happened. One of the most legendary things. I posted the first page of the Seekers article on Cannon Fire Discord. You guys can see how he was working. Cool. Gary, you're gonna be very happy, by the way, for this new first level group that I have starting on Saturday, because I'm gonna have I can tell everyone here, because I don't think any of the players are watching right now. I'm going to play a bounty hunter mage character. And the reason I'm doing it, they don't have a mage in the party. They have a necromancer, and they're going to have a couple bards. And it's old school bards. So, and they'll have a tracker. But this guy is going to be an undercover agent for the Seekers in Altamira. So there you go. I'm a Seekers of the Arcane guy. So, hope you like that. Not written up and named yet. I'm working on it. The character will be done by Saturday. So, you should be happy there for that. That way we can throw some silent ones in there and all sorts of other things in Altamira and get some more stuff. Good there. Les, what do you got?
I'm going to give you guys a combination of things. Yet again, I'm going to go to one of the Grey Grimoire articles.
Okay.
This one is in Dragon 241.
I have that one.
And
Wow.
just so you know, this is yet another reference that was worked into the White Rose article.
Oh, beautiful.
Legacy
of the Soul Imperium?
No.
Oh, no.
There's a Greyhawk Grimoire article in there. It's on page. There's a lot of Greyhawk material in this issue. Actually.
Oh, Roger Moore did that one. Modron Magic. Oh God, that hurts.
And then if you go down,
Robert Mullen again.
Yep, Robert Mullen again. You'll notice all these kinds of cool books, but the one in particular that I want to focus on is Sclerotin's Manifesto. And the reason I want to mention it is there's a reference in it to the book came into possession in 441 Common here of Linnea Halstrith, the Lady Sage of Safton. Already a specialist in Suloi's history, Linnea found the manifesto to be an indispensable component to her work. In fact, much of what present-day scholars know of the manifesto is due to the Lady Sage's meticulous notes. And then it disappeared again. But Lydia, you may recall, is also the source for a lot of that information about the White Rose of the Sul Imperium.
Right.
Okay.
Commentary
on the history of the Sul. And also, in my campaign, she has a descendant.
Huh.
Let me pull that up. She has a descendant named Lanolin Halstrith.
Lanolin? You mean from the Rogues Gallery?
No. This is a different.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow. I thought you used that. Yeah. Okay.
Lanolin wrote a work, and you're going to love the title of this, dude. The book is called Ocular Occultism. However, the full title of the book, to give you the thing, is, let me pull that up. Being a treatise upon the ocular occultism, being a treatise upon the removal and substitution of orbs, prosthetic and natural, otherworldly and mortal, and upon the benefits and hazards of such practices. So you'll note, of course, you have the stuff with Grumps, you've got stuff with Vecna, you've got Fultons blinding themselves, you have Gelor in the novel with that magic eye. You've got all these magical eyes and eye-associated imagery throughout the Fleness, right?
Right.
Well, Lanolith wrote an entire.
Okay.
Her major work is basically a study of all the uses that eyeballs and both real and artificial were put to in the world. So I've worked that into my campaign as well, ocular occultism. One of my as a matter of fact, my girlfriend's PC is a descendant of the Hulstrith family and feels the burden, if that makes sense. All these women in the family produce these great works, and basically she's effing around, adventuring, and barely staying out of jail.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, the ne'er-do-well of the Hulstrith family. But yeah, the Hulstrith family from that article. And that's another thing is you can work in, like I said, scholars. This is that PC is a PC who grew up around books, right?
Right.
Because the Hulstrith family's reputation and its areas of expertise, and of course surrounded by tales of the Sul Imperium and the Sul migrations. So that's another way that you can build that into the narrative of your or the fabric of your world, rather. Weave that in.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
But yeah, there's some really cool stuff in there. The Pyronomicon is another great.
I'm looking at that, and this is Corruptus spells that did not know they
Attributed
existed.
to Corruptus, yeah.
What publication was this?
241 Dragon.
241. Thank you.
That is pretty neat.
Yeah, and all of these have a great amount of. When you're dealing with them, bear in mind that the way that it's presented is these little write-ups about the history of the book and how it disappeared and stuff. It should remind you very much of Raiders of the Lost Ark, right?
Right.
Where
yeah.
they're going over the history of the Ark at the beginning.
Hey, dude.
What, you never went to Sunday school? It's like, what, you never took a class in Sul history? Well, here's a so and again, some of it may be factually inaccurate, right? You can toy with that because, and there are even gaps within the text where one of these books will disappear for quite a while, right?
Yeah. Gary said that's exactly what he's going for with the Seekers.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. These kinds of organizations are always great. And how much value would a group like the Seekers, say, or the Circle of Eight, or whoever, place upon certain volumes?
So there's a book in here from Jaren Crimea, too. And there's actually a Tislin Sand spell and a Jaren spell.
Yep.
First I've ever seen them.
Yep.
Very, very awesome. But these spells look like they're written in second edition. 97. Yep. That's still second edition era. Yeah.
Yep.
The very end of it, but yep.
Yeah, but yeah.
But still.
Great ones, Les. Wow. I like the Pyronomicon because it talks about Flan.
You have the Corruptus symbol on top of it.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's it?
Yep. That's the K, Corruptus K, with the snakes around it.
Yep.
Or worms, rather. Yep. But they look more like snakes with eyes and stuff.
It's in Greyhawk City, and then now it's all right. Wonder if
by the way, it's a good thing of introducing, since we were talking about film. Top mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm sure some of your audience might be familiar with the novel The Club du Mas by Arturo Perez Reverte. Grodog, Alan and I talked about this a few times because I know Alan's a big fan of those books. But there's a film version that was done, alas, by Polanski, called The Ninth Gate, which you may remember, where it's the whole search for this book that may be connected to the devil. And it's an ancient book, and there's this whole thing about like the skullduggery and swindling and backstabbing that goes on in the antiquarian book business, right? And that kind of thing, if you read that novel, which is a great, great novel, I highly recommend it, or if you indulge in the film, you'll get a taste, which changes a lot of stuff from the book, needless to say, and changes the ending. But I would say go ahead and that's a great source for thinking about how these things work. Like, someone has a book, if the book is rare enough, and people place enough value upon the book, as with most items of value to human beings, someone will kill for it.
True.
And if it conveys power, they're going to want that, if that makes sense.
Right.
And there might be a price to it. Yeah, Sam, that's exactly why I recommend going back to the book as well, because I think the book is vastly superior to the film all around. And it has all kinds of neat references that I think a lot of you guys out there would dig, some little throwaway references. But yeah, definitely try thinking about it in those kinds of terms. There's another character, just to give you another example. There is a character in my campaign who is a somewhat frumpy half-orc who has a very rare. She's one of the few people you'll encounter with an intact pair of spectacles, and she is extremely intelligent. I deliberately, this is an NPC, and she actually studied in Greyhawk, but she has no particular interest in magic. She's just interested in knowing about books. And basically that's what she does. Is she's one of her projects is recovering from the wrecked Wizards and Sages archive in Spine Castle, recovering what books she can. And she's got a kind of weird double thing going where she's helping smuggle books that have particular power that adventurers might acquire from elsewhere in the city. They can bring them to her, she'll cut them a deal, and then make sure the book is smuggled out to Neural or to Radek, right under the nose of the Hextorians. The Hextorians kind of tolerate it because there's all this political stuff going on about who owned what before. They just as soon not mess with any of this stuff, and she is useful in other ways to them. So she's kind of playing both sides, 2 or 3 sides, and helping get some dangerous volumes out of Spine Castle. So kind of neat and fun. But yeah, that's one of my. I have that. I have another character who's an eccentric guy who is based on. Probably shouldn't say this, but I won't mention the name. He's based on a guy I know who owned a used bookstore, who was a bit of a prick. And I went ahead and based the character on him, and he basically will mark up the value of certain books, and if cornered about it, he'll say, "Well, I'll cut you a deal for so and so." And you get to haggle with him, which I think is an important part of this kind of thing. So yeah, that's another. These are the kinds of the NPCs you can associate with this stuff, rather than just directly your wizards. There are also sages and scholars and other types, and just antiquarians, right, who might have an interest in this sort of thing. Maybe they're interested in the former world. Maybe it's someone who is no longer a spellcaster, but his ancestor was a noted spellcaster. And so he's really interested in a book that his ancestor had some hand in, or that mentions his ancestor. So that book, that useless book that you picked up that no one actually wants, turns out there's an aristocrat somewhere who actually does want it and would pay top coin because it mentions his great-great-great-great-grandfather. So yeah.
So speaking of like falsehoods, and I was just looking this up, and that is this is Eric Mona during Age of Worms, creating this book, The Way of the Ebon Triad.
Yeah.
And what's funny is it says, a blasphemous collection of apocalyptic essays, epic poems, and cryptographs that discuss the advent of an era called Age of Worms, which an overgod of evil would arise. However, the Way is a bogus prophecy, and the Ebon Triad is a false cult.
Yeah, exactly. So we know that it's bullshit. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
it's fantastic. So
and that's in 3 Faces of Evil, Dungeon 125. That's one of the. I don't know which number, if that's first or second, but it's one of the earlier ones from Age of Worms, if I recall.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, those kinds of books are always and again, there's also, and I think I mentioned this before, because now we're getting into religion, which is another fun area where you can have books available for the characters.
Most religions probably have some sort of scripture with prayers and guidelines and whatnot,
or texts that pertain to different aspects of life.
Yeah, or meaning they want their priests and followers and stuff to adhere to the religion and its message, so to speak. So,
and you can also wind up with, and this comes up in I think some of the stuff that Sean Reynolds and others did with Heronius and stuff. you do have the idea that you have, and certainly with Cuthbert and Fultus, you have the idea that you have dissenting factions, or they may worship the same god, but they're not necessarily the same, for lack of a better term, denomination.
Right.
They view their god differently. So you have heretical texts, you have apocryphal texts, you have texts that are kind of tolerated, but they're not considered by mainstream worshippers in whichever territory. Like maybe in this text is okay, considered okay here. In this other land, this text is considered bad, right? And again, you have the idea that also that this is a polytheistic world. You're going to have people who worship different gods, and maybe have mixtures of texts in their collections, right? Like maybe they have the funerary texts of Lee Joss mixed in with the Dance of Neural, right? I mean, these are both things having to do with death and the body and things, but these are approaching two different attitudes. One is kind of the all flesh is grass, if you will, and the other one is the proper way of disposing of a Sul corpse, and so on. So
That's
so yeah,
excellent.
that's another way of approaching it, I think. But yeah, definitely. I love the idea that the religions, if you go through those articles, those core belief articles in particular, it quite often gives you names and details of some of these texts. Matter of fact, I'll be bringing some of those up in a little while.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah, those are great. The other thing I would say though is the idea of false texts. Like I've had my players read books before where it was one group. You know, I mentioned the Feast of Adoina before. The idea of these good people coming, the good aligned clerics all getting together, right? Setting aside their differences to fight evil. Well, that doesn't always last. And so I do have, you know, periodically a priest will write a lawful good priest will write a treatise or a pamphlet denouncing someone from another faith, right? Or another lawful good faith as being somehow corrupt or inaccurate in its view of the world. And you wind up with those. I mean, those are fun little things too. Your players maybe, as they're familiar, you know, what do you know about this faith? Well, you learned from the priest where you grew up, who showed you this pamphlet about how these people are actually wrong-headed. Here's why they're wrong-headed. And sure enough, if you follow them, this one worshiper of them wound up becoming a fiend worshiper. And that's why you can't trust them. They're good. They seem like they're good, but they're morally weak compared to our faith.
Morally weak.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome stuff. Lots of hey Walt, a lot more than you think out there, which is really you know, there's a lot of books written. You just gotta know where to find them, and Les has found a lot of them for us, which is wonderful. All right, Anna, what do you got?
We have one that I think we need. Don't think we mentioned that we need to mention, and that's the Codex of Infinite Planes by Zunk.
Yeah.
And I think it's originally it was in the D&D supplement for Eldritch Wizardry.
Yeah, in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Yep.
Yeah, and then in the Dungeon Master's Guide afterwards. So it's been since the earliest versions of D&D. In OD&D version, so to speak, and then it's been mentioned in many different over and over again in many different sites. But it's kind of interesting because Zunk, the first time I encountered him was when I did my maps, and there is a tomb of Zunk's hands up in the Barrens. And there is a poor tomb of Ygrak's hands. So that got me to thinking maybe that was some sort of punishment for wizards back in the day, that they cut off the hands and hid them somewhere if they were casting dangerous magic or something. So as a punishment or something. It's kind of, since there are two tombs just for hands of former old wizards back in history, so to speak, in the one of the most remote locations in the Flanese. That seems to indicate something. Meaning, once it can happen by accident, twice is not an accident. Then there is something behind it, so to speak. There's a reason so you can kind of come up with a plot around this. That's what the old Flan, when they didn't like your spellcaster, they cut off their hands and hid them somewhere so they couldn't cast magic or something or write scrolls and stuff.
So
But it's
that's I didn't know that. That's
yeah, it's just me spinning out of the fact that there are 2 tombs for hands, both of Yggdrasil and
Yeah.
Sunk up there. So I was like, I'm just extrapolating, making plot ideas here coming from there, so to speak. And Sunk, it's one of these standard old D&D stuff, doesn't have originally anything to do with Greyhawk, and then been kind of introduced into the setting and shoehorned in a bit and integrated, a bit like Vecna and a bunch of other stuff have been integrated into Greyhawk over time, so to speak, and then got places up there too.
So let me do this real quick. I found 2 books and from the Ashes located, and that's in the Atlas here under Symbols and Glyphs of the Flannes. If you come down here on the second paragraph, it talks about secret societies, cult sages, and wizards have their own marks and runes. It's about runes. The curious reader should travel to the University of Greyhawk Library and consult Zaggy Gagarin's Runic Mysteries Revealed, or more reliably, Jawal Severnane's Compendium of Science and Magical and Mundane for further detail. So this is Sergeant putting in some book references from the Ashes.
What page?
This is the Atlas. From
Atlas,
from the Ashes Atlas, which is book 1 and page 17, I think.
17, awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep,
perfect.
that's where they are. Yeah. So, all right, Les.
I was going to say, I'll suggest one thing, and in a moment. But one of the other cool things about that is that, there's I believe in that Mundane book, there's in that article on the Mundane, there's also a description of where I believe it might have been a Cuthbertine cleric. Anyway, someone went off on a rant about all these evil cults, right? And describing all these evil cults.
Right.
And the point is that it's completely biased. Might have been a Fulton. But at any rate, the thing is that it's useful for surface level detail, but it's completely inaccurate, right? I think that comes up. It comes up in Vecna Lives as well. There's a similar kind of text. I think it might. I might be confusing the two. It's in either Vecna Lives or that Mundane and Magical article. But yeah, nonetheless, if you look, that there's this book that was written by a cleric, who just basically it's a recent book, and it's a tirade basically against all these cults and how they'll lead you down, they'll lead your soul to damnation and whatnot. But what's interesting is it notes that the information in the book is not always accurate, right? The information in the pamphlet is not always accurate. And that's something to keep in mind, is secret societies are secret societies. You can think of similar groups in our world where they were alleged to do everything from, if a hen didn't drop eggs, they were clearly responsible for that. It was clearly a Masonic or whatever kind of conspiracy that this hen was not laying eggs. You can think of similar things with these secret societies and mystical orders in Victorian and Edwardian England, right? Where they built up reputations for sinister practices, and some of them probably did indulge in a lot of hedonistic, probably horrible things, but the reputation didn't hurt them either, and they didn't mind the reputation, if that makes sense. So that's one of those things where you can go ahead and play with that. How much of what the players know about this cult is real or not? But going back to the weirdness little factor, I'm going to mention Vecna Lives yet again.
Yeah, a lot are in Vecna Lives.
Nomic Ceres.
Yeah, I know. I saw that one too. It's here, and I know that's what do you call it? In the do I have it up? Still, I don't. Yeah, Greyhawk. Yeah, go ahead. It talks about the Crown Hills, right?
Yep, and the Gnomish Warrens there. And of course, it mentions that there were humans who hired gnomes to construct a tomb that was designed to keep something in rather than keep people out.
And what was it to keep something in?
Exactly, what was it?
Oh, so it's unknown what it was.
Well, you can probably piece together. It mentions Osnabrück as well, and of course Osnabrück, is the gnomish community where a certain magical sword was hidden and stored there. So it might be connected to all this stuff that's going on in the Vecna-Liv's adventure, But yeah, I like that, and I like the idea also of a specifically gnomish work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because we don't
Because
get many of
thing.
those.
And yet we know that Celine has a massive archive, right?
Yeah, with not a lot of detail.
Yeah, we don't know what books are in there, and presumably a lot of the information, the scroll work, and presumably books or whatever else that are in there, they're going to be whatever records are in there are going to be of elven making. So again, that opens the door for Anna was mentioning the idea of dwarven runic inscriptions, and I'm like, here you have the idea of gnomish literature, and
Yeah.
you also have the idea of elvish literature. If they have an archive, there's got to be something in the archive, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to flesh it out. I mean, there's one of the things that I made sure to do with the Hallstreet family is that because they're so curious and because, basically they've weaseled their way into everybody's good graces, the Hallstreet women have.
Well, come on, can you blame them?
They know, they're friends with some scholars in Hardby. They're friends. They have contacts among the even the silent ones. They have some contacts with the silent ones. They have contacts with the elves with respect to the archive. They have contacts with the druids and the old lore bards. It's basically, they want to keep that flow of information because, if you're a historian, you're going to want to keep your sources open, right? You'll listen to them even when two sources contradict each other. You're just going to nod and listen to the person tell the story the way that, or read what version of the story that this group believes. And you can make it a footnote saying that you're not sure which is true or that you believe this more than the other.
So let me do another one quick one here from an adventure because I've always wanted to get this person on. I'm not sure if they're past or not. We got to ask Paul Luby and Stuart Kerrigan and them. Graham Morris, do we know?
Yeah. What about him?
Well, here UK2, the Sentinel.
Yeah.
I mean, he did a lot of the UKs. But if we go down here, I love this. We go to page 22.
Yeah.
They got some obscure little books here in the library, which are cool because they're just, I think it's 22, 21 or 22. And at this Lakeside Villa here. So we come to Lakeside Villa and the Southern Library right here. Okay. V11 room, page 21, 22. And here they are. Here they are. 3 books. Wobluff, a cheaply production edition of a classic saga. So it's, busting on real, the illustrated pages torn out. Cenozoic glacial geology, Anna. There you go.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah. So, So, and it's got a little quirk in it. And then the last one's the art of course angling, about freshwater fishing. So, neat. Just random stuff. What's up, Curtis? Thrown in at the right time. All right, Anna, we're getting close to the wind up here. What do you got?
Let's see here. We have to mention the Book of Vile Darkness as well.
Yeah,
by
true.
Vecna.
Yeah.
That's another one we just have to mention it. It came out in 3rd edition as a source book as well, but it's supposed to be a book in the setting as well, so to speak.
It says it's penned by a Vasharan spellcaster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know what a Vasharan is. I'm sorry. What's a Vasharan?
Vashar?
Yeah, Vashar. Yeah.
Is that Vastari? Is that what they're saying?
It says here. We'll go to it. This is in the wiki. The first book of All of Darkness was originally a scroll penned by millennia ago by a Vasharan spellcaster. I don't know what that is. Years later, priests in the world discovered the scroll.
Vasharan.
Yeah. Gary, what's a Vasharan? Sam, what's a Vasharan? Here, I'll click on this Vasharan and see where it goes. It doesn't go anywhere.
Oh, Vasharan. It's yeah.
Vashar. Yeah.
Vashar.
Yeah.
What's Vashar?
Old people. Yeah.
Pre sort of like these.
It's one of these
humans.
people that lived back in. Someone invented a group of people.
Oh,
the Vasharans. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. Like the Urflan or something. So
okay,
yeah.
but where are they from? Where are they from?
They're the first humans.
We don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like they're supposed to be descended from. They're supposed to be, if memory serves, because I kind of. I don't want to go too much into this because I'm working on something with it. But the general idea is that with the Flan were supposed to be the first people in the Flaness, right? But someone added the Vasharans, and the Vasharans apparently were descended from quote unquote the first man. That's capital F first, capital M man.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea would be that these were the first human beings.
Okay.
And they're supposed to have, at least according to some of the stuff.
First I've ever heard of it. For sure.
I bet that mentioned somewhere. I know I've put it in somewhere. So yeah. It's I've heard the term before.
Yeah, it's like that's it's the Vasharan come from the Book of Vile Darkness itself, so that's where they're from. I mean, from the third edition book.
Okay.
So
are you choking, Anna? Please don't choke.
No. It's just I'm just getting tickly throat. Yeah.
I think the Book of Vile Darkness is one of the books I want to get, but I've never been able to get because it's so expensive.
Yeah, well, Vasharan spellcaster. Maybe it's just the name of a place that Vasharan come from, or Vashar too. So you never
Gary
know.
put Torhun equals Vasharan. Not sure.
Yeah, there's been a lot of
Torhun. Yeah, Torhun is another term from ancient times back in the day. So
yeah, there've been a lot of attempts to reconcile the Valshar with stuff from canon.
Yeah, a lot of this.
But the only place it was mentioned was in that Book of Vile Darkness in third edition. So
yeah.
So you're saying James Jacobs wrote that in?
Yeah, these are probably, my guess is that these are cool terms invented because they wanted something to sound cool in the product, and now we're overthinking it, so to speak.
All right,
which is kind of cool. We should overthink it because that stuff come from overthinking, but I'm just saying that there's probably not that much behind it, so there's no truth to find. It's just cool. We can invent cool stuff from the stuff.
Yeah, Sam is spot on there. Basically, there's no direct connection to Greyhawk, but what happened was Monty Cook and Company included the term in Book of Vile Darkness.
Yep.
And the idea of these being the first, descended from the first man, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And then, but that was a book, right? It wasn't a Greyhawk book. It was a third edition book. And it has Greyhawk elements, but it was designed for general blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so now people try reconciling that with Greyhawk lore.
Well, that's typical. It's like the early days. We got a lot of generic stuff written for a convention module, and then it got shoehorned into the setting, like Ghost Tower of Inverness or Soykent, or not. But
the setting
White
hadn't
Blue Mountain, for
formed.
instance.
Yeah, the setting hadn't really formed then.
Exactly.
This is
it's
much later.
But it's kind of typical Greyhawk. We get a lot of stuff integrated into the setting.
By the way,
or the other.
Speaking of that, by the way, did you notice that on Mike Schley's map there is no Sasserine on the map?
No, exactly. We know exactly because that was something that made during the Paizo era. So so it probably was. They wanted to make sure they didn't step on any toes. Same reason that there is no Blackmore, probably.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
But even if they have the rights, there might be. Yeah, something. So it might be a courtesy of Paizo or something. So yeah.
Yeah, Sam, I would just ignore the comment That's what for ease for me. That's what I do. I'm like, I don't know
I
what this is. I
love
don't
these
care.
stuff. I dig into it and make a
Right,
whole
but
chicken of I make a whole chicken coop from a feather, so to speak.
yeah,
So
but my guys don't know if they had chicken salad or tuna fish for
oh,
lunch, so it
my
doesn't matter for me. You
they
know what I
have to
mean?
well, it matters for me, and
Yeah, I
then
know, I
eventually
know.
we'll yeah. So I love to do that
I'm
stuff.
just saying that
So
if I say the word
yeah.
Vasharen on my table, my guys are going to
Mhm.
look like this for about 10
Okay.
seconds, and they're not even
Yeah.
going to understand. So it's just
Yeah.
like, so. All right, what do we got in closing here? Anna was great. This has been a great topic.
I think it's a lot of fun because like my Zunk idea now, I came up with something that the old Flan probably did to wizards back in the day. So that is one of my plot ideas to develop. So you might come up with gruesome legends or something about how they treated wizards back in the day that became too adept at arcane powers or something like that. So there's so much stuff you can do with it. And of course, I think it's I would say that a book in the form of an artifact is a given. We have several of them, and I also think
Yeah.
because power is knowledge, and you can and you can also make it encrypted, like Les described. It can be an artifact, but it's not obviously an artifact. It becomes an artifact. It unveils or it reveals itself to you as you read it, and then it might be too late, so to speak. So it's kind of it's that there's a lot of cool possibilities you can do with it, and just to put in interesting plot hooks or distractions and stuff like that. So yeah.
Les, what about you, man?
Are we wrapping up or?
Yeah, you can bring
Yeah,
up
I
something
think
else.
it's time.
So yeah, you can bring up
Yeah, a
something
couple
else.
couple of things I wanted to mention
Yeah,
since I was
please.
mentioning Sean Reynolds and those wonderful core beliefs articles.
Yeah,
There were
yeah.
two in his article on Bokub that I really liked. One of which was the Words of the Prophets, which is an extensive collection of prophecies, whether about minor subjects of contested value and veracity, or from sometimes unreliable sources. This book is a source of many debates within the church. Every student of Bokub is required to study it as a lesson in the problems of vague prophecy. Every few years, someone finds enough clues to connect part of the book to ongoing events. Those who embrace the book in its entirety tend to have an apocalyptic mindset, as many of its verses pertain to destruction and mayhem. So the whole book is intended to instruct you on the problems with vague prophecies and everything else. But then, of course, there are those who study it and see signs in the present world of, hey, this is what that prophecy was about, and tend to take on an apocalyptic worldview. And I kind of like that ambiguity,
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
then the rare water, which is I was talking about heretical texts. Although some members of the faith consider this book a heresy and its adherents misguided fools, it is gaining strength among lawful followers of Bokub. The book postulates that magic is a finite resource, and every item created or spell cast expends a part of it. Using select quotes from the Uncaring's will, that's the main text of the cult, to back up its assertions in a roundabout fashion. Followers of this doctrine seek to limit the use of magic except in emergency situations, policing themselves and others as best they can with their limited numbers and no support from the main church.
No support from the main church. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like I said, the main church considers this borderline heretical. So, but yeah, things like that. They're all, you can use ideas. If you see what I mean, you can do this. You can create your own texts too.
Yep.
Don't feel. I think I've given a few examples from my campaign. I would also suggest that you do stuff. Research something called letter locking, which I mentioned in chat with you guys the
Yeah, you did in
other night.
Discord. Yeah.
What letter locking is? It's an old form of. Basically, it's a folded letter where if you open it incorrectly, it destroys and damages the text within. This was a common communication. There are several. I think some letters were discovered fairly recently in the last few years that had to do with Queen Elizabeth's court. These were a nice way of communicating privately to people back during the Middle Ages. They were folded. Think of it as like almost like writing on origami. It's not quite three-dimensional, but I'm saying imagine paper folded with that kind of elaborate structure. So
what's in it? Is something released in it if it's unfolded wrong?
If you unfold it wrong, it starts tearing the paper.
Oh, okay.
and destroys the message.
Huh.
Basically, I mean, and then sometimes, in addition to that, you'll have the kind of thing that I've mentioned before, where you have what the letter says, and then you have a substitution code or some other encryption used, so that there's what the letter is saying and then what the letter is actually saying, if you know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
As a kind of backup. So that's another thing that you can have, because people tuck letters. If you've spent enough time around used books, you'll realize people tuck letters into books, right? That people tuck photographs. I found so many old photographs of people. I don't even know who they are. So it's like a photograph of somebody standing in one of the main streets in Shanghai, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
And the book is inscribed to my beloved so and so.
Yeah.
With a date.
Yeah. And Gary takes up another good point that I hinted to before, that it doesn't need to be written books or on paper. Meaning, I have almond nuts, for instance, that it's like the language there is like a South American language that is actually on nut.
Yeah.
You put little nuts on. Yeah. So there's many different forms of language in various other forms.
We'll say literature of communication. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can do, and druidic ones is that you do things without nature. You kind of twist the twigs,
another way that
or something.
Related to that, and it's something that I would tweak, is that some cultures, for example, I tend to envision the Flan as relying a lot on oral traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And many of these other cultures would too, but I'm saying that you would get a shift. Oral traditions tend to be more flexible and more fluid at times in their presentation of events, right?
Yep.
Hang on a second. Remember that a lot of oral is so rigid because they are so scared of it getting.
Some are.
Yeah.
It depends on the nature. For example, if it's a religious thing, then yes, it would be.
Yes, some oral tradition is very inflexible and rigid, simply because the nature of memory, in order to retain the message, they need to be very inflexible. So,
but here's the contrast to that.
Yeah.
You have that kind of keeping the word, preserving the word orally.
Yeah.
But then you also have, and you see this certainly within certain bodies of Greco-Roman literature. You see this in the variant strains, not just because the texts were then Christianized, but because the traditions themselves were fluid, of Welsh and Celtic literature, where you're recounting battles and things like that. And the details will change, and magical feats will become stronger or weaker. Then you have the attempt to record these things, right? And so, someone may assume that they know the story of Cuchulainn or something like that, and then you go back and you find out that there's a variant text which records a different version of the events in that tale. Presumably also from an oral tradition, just a differing oral tradition or a differing region, right?
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed. I always say Cuchulainn.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
It's Welsh. You can get away with saying whatever you
want. Okay.
we probably all saying it wrong, so yeah.
But no, my thing is that, like, I agree, and when it comes to religion, yes, but I'm not talking necessarily religion. I'm talking history here as well.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what you can wind up with there is you can have, say, the Iridians recorded tales of the Flan, the conquered Flan, or
think of Shakespeare stories or something like that. So
where you embellish upon stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course you have the transformation to, say, theater or to opera, since there's an opera house in Greyhawk. Why the heck not? And you have these transformations that these stories undergo, and so you can have this situation where the characters read something, or they've read something in the past, or they've seen something, so they assume they know the story, but they don't really know the story because the story has been told and retold.
Yeah.
And embellished and recoded so many times.
Yeah. And you can imagine like magic or something where you have each component written in different books. So if you have one of them, you don't understand what it is. More than one is like hand signals written down, and another one is more like a alchemical formula for material or stuff like that. So each of them by themselves doesn't give you anything, but once you put them together, then they might be completely different titles, and one is just something about chemistry, and another one is about dancing or whatever it is, and once you put them together, you have the components for a spell, and then when you cast it, that reveals an illusion that tells you the real story. Meaning you can have a cryptic thing wrapped up in enigma told by a story, and meaning you can go many layers deep here if you want to in your games.
Well, that's, we were talking about printing earlier, and I think this is a good example of the sort of thing I'm talking about. Is prior to, excuse me, the development of the Gutenberg press,
Yeah.
there was one of the most popular works in Europe that was done, if I'm not mistaken, it was largely done using wood blocking rather than actual.
Well, that
print.
was the print you carved out. Now you can use wood block to print. Yeah.
Yeah, but this was for fixed pages.
Yeah.
It was it's an esoteric text with a really convoluted Latin title. And what it is basically is it's describing this guy pursuing this woman, because of course it is. But what it's actually describing by some accounts is a method of spiritual and physical meditations. In other words, it's more an occultic text or an esoteric text than it's an allegorical text, if that makes sense. And I'm saying you could see that where, say, someone might have written their spell book in such a way that the uninitiated, the person who's not familiar with that symbology, wouldn't understand it. Like it might say, take the flaming heart of take the flaming heart from the beating breast of the phoenix, and then lay the flaming heart upon my lady's lap, and blah blah blah. And what it's describing is actually a series of spell components and gestures, right?
Yeah.
But anyone who's going to read it is not
Procedure.
going to know that. They're going to wonder what the hell is this tripping person going on about?
Yeah.
Because you don't want, that's if you're a spellcaster, you're not going to necessarily want to spell out, if you'll pardon the pun, all your secrets. You're going to code it so that maybe those who you've trained will pick up on your hints and be able to follow in your shoes.
Yeah, I mean, each spellcaster, you might invent your own scripting, and in order to decipher that, you need to learn that specific magic font or scripture or whatever you call it.
Yeah, or about that school or about that school's masters.
Yeah, meaning the Greyhawk wizard schools and stuff might have a special script themselves that they use to store things in or something. So
I mean, a similar text you can look at the whole, and I'm talking about the original, not the back of the magazine stuff, but some of those original Rosicrucian texts, right, which are describing things allegorically. And really, to grasp them, you either need a thorough knowledge of the subject matter and symbology and its history, or you need an annotated version.
Yep.
Which, by the way, is another cool thing you can work into your text. Annotated versions of text, where scholars have gone through and added marginalia and footnotes.
Yep.
So this has been a great discussion, right? We've really gotten into a lot of deep things here, and I'm assuming we've missed, there's always something we missed and could come back to as well. But like some really obscure things, I mean stuff I've never even looked at before, and I really appreciate it. I really do.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys had me on.
Great to have you. Yeah.
So I promised my wife I would be available at 9:10, so I got to bolt through this. So so something going on. So Anna, what do we got going on?
I posted two things today. I posted a sneak peek to Hawktail's fantasy roleplay learning rules, and their books is one way you can learn things. So that was a sneak peek. And I also posted 14 new shields. They're the missing heraldry that pointed out that I'd never got around to doing the new version. So there are 14 of them that I posted today. There's more stuff coming fairly soon. So that's the update I have today, and there will be a mapping live stream on Friday. So yeah.
Beautiful. Les, what's going on?
I had a rough week or so there.
Really sorry.
That's quite all right. Other than that, I'm hopefully back on track and getting some material cranked out. And of course, we've got Virtual Greyhawk Con coming up, which I'm really excited about.
Yep.
And also, I'll be playtesting some material
we need
for
more
some
sign-ups.
people. And this is on my own time. I'll be playtesting some material in the next month or so for some people. So if anyone out there is interested, go ahead and send me a private message, either here or on the Discord, and we'll see if we can fit you in to do some playtesting on some yet to be announced material.
That's
In some
fantastic.
cases,
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
some of it's announced, some of it's been teased, some of it hasn't. I think everyone will be pleased when with the stuff in question. So go ahead and reach out if you're interested. It's not in Spine Castle, so you stand a chance of survival. So good.
Nice. Fantastic. So, speaking of Flan, I found a Flan map. It's to some secret. Where do you see? I've thrown in stuff here I've never done before, with a real huge moral dilemma coming up in this adventure tomorrow night. It's what's down there, and they know that the Dark Cloaks in the north already they fought some of them. There's supposedly multiple copies, and they're right on Mastrine's border, so they're not even sure if they're in Mastrine's lands or not. So there's that. So Race to the Prize. We continue that tomorrow night. It says Classic D&D reprint. I may change that up. And then Saturday afternoon at 2, that session 0 I had on Monday, we have a new menace. It's a new menace in the Altamira area. That's all I'll say. So
Nice.
I got their characters all done, ready to go from the session 0. We are good to go. Yeah, we got almost every character but one is a multi-class or dual-class type. Yeah, so it's a lot of that. Yeah, and it'll be a fun 2 brand new players. Case Spellboy and I can't say it. Desafina, Do Music. And a couple. Sir Timothy's been on once, and then Korg and Coco are always fun. It'll be a good group, and it'll be Saturday, and then we'll have a Gavin Sunday, and I don't know what that is yet. Because I'm always running behind now lately. So let's do the giveaway real quick. See who wins that. Then we're gonna raid into Folk and Myth. All right, we'll raid into them. We haven't done them in a bit here, so I'm gonna close this out. Last call, and I still owe Crazy Cyber something we haven't gotten together yet on giveaway stuff. Here we go. I'm gonna close this out, closing it out, and the winner is Pat66, congrats.
Woohoo, congratulations.
As long as you're on to claim, Pat66 is in chat, so there you go. All right, let's see what you want, Pat. I got a whole bunch of stuff. I do have D1 to 2, I have G1 to 3, Adventure Begins books, City of Greyhawk, Treasures, Vecna Lives, Veil of the Mage, and a lot of other things. So just let me know and get with me in chat, and we'll take care of that. And let's raid into Folk and Myth now, and we'll see you all tomorrow night if you can. But it'll be a fun game, as long as my guys don't fall asleep. Just kidding. So, it's rough work days. So, Les, Anna, thanks. Great discussion.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
It was wonderful.
Thank you, everybody,
Absolutely.
for being here.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys.
Of course.
Yep.
We'll see you all soon. We set the raid up in. We're going with 80 people. That's beautiful. Kind of did promise my wife something, so yes. Let's see how many we get here. Nice. All right, 68, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See you tomorrow night. Have a good one. Make sure it went.
Yep.
I got double.